Welcome to Everyday Economics, the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, president of the 501c3 nonprofit Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics is a production of America's Talking Network. You can check out all of our great podcasts at americastalking.com. To support podcasts such as this one, please make your tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We are recording this episode on Tuesday, December 20th, and joining me, as always, is my friend, my partner, and one of my favorite people in the world to talk to, Dr. Orphe Divounguy. Is a PhD economist. Dr. O, as you know, I get to spend a lot of time on the road in American cities, traveling around the United States. I mean, doing the things that I do for Franklin News Foundation. I have not been in San Francisco for a while. I think it's been 4 years. 4 years ago, the city was really, frankly, not in great shape. It's worse. And while this recent story in the New York Times about the emptying of American cities, I think it has us all like sort of thinking about, what's going on in our nearest big town. The headline poses the question, what's next for the most empty downtown in America? How bad is it in San Francisco? How bad is it economically in San Francisco?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting question. In order to really understand, you have to figure out what it is that drives the growth of cities. Urban growth. And there's a lot of theories and there's a lot of research that went into this, of course. And so roads, infrastructure, housing supply, right? Human capital, workers with skills. Those are all important drivers of city growth. Other ones include like smaller firms, more competition, greater diversity in production. Those are all factors that drive city growth. What's going on in San Francisco? Well, first, we had the biggest shock in over 100 years in COVID-19 that basically drove people out of major city centers towards more space. San Francisco, the whole Bay Area, people went to the suburbs. But also, right, we have this surge in work from home. It's the San Francisco area, the Bay Area in general, very tech heavy. Tech workers don't need to work in an office space. They can work from home. And so a lot of tech people with their income and their wealth went to buy homes across the country in places where they could get more space, where they could get maybe a little bit more time outdoors and do their thing. And they're very successful doing it that way. I think it's going to take a lot to bring workers back into that area. But then you also have, when you think about housing, restrictions to housing supply in that area, I think are a problem. In California, you have a lot of restrictions on housing supply. And I think that could be a big problem for that area, for that region.
I think we've learned a lot about what we're willing to accept and tolerate in the last 3 years. 2 complete years, through, the beginning of 2020. And now as we head into 2023, we'll be really very, very close to another year of dealing with the issues around COVID. I think that what we're seeing in with the emptying of cities is really a natural reaction to not want to be part of that if you don't have to be. Urban areas have been where the jobs are. I think there are a lot of people who've chosen to live in cities because they need to be where the jobs were. Now the jobs aren't there. They don't want to be in the cities, and they've voiced their discontent by literally, adopting a remote lifestyle where possible and are digging in and they don't want to come back. I mean, I think it's why we saw, such massive home growth, in particular, like in Boise, Idaho, right? I mean, it's not as if Boise doesn't have a growing tech scene. They do have a growing tech scene, but there are a lot of people who are living in Boise, Idaho, who are working for companies that are in San Francisco or Seattle that have just said, I'm out of here.
That's right.
People from Seattle have moved to Phoenix. People from San Francisco have moved to Phoenix. The influx of people moving into Texas and into Florida. There are a lot of factors here, beyond COVID, but I think COVID...
It accelerated something that was probably going to happen very soon.
While I'm being negative about this, you did sort of like, you walked up to this question, asked it, and then walked away from it. I'm going to bring it back. How do you repair the cities at this point? Because Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, Los Angeles, gosh, I'd even say like Salt Lake City, and it's in Denver, the Western cities in particular, the homelessness and the crime that are there that have like sort of taken the place of everyday normalcy. They're not easily ignored. So how do you repair these situations?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I don't think homelessness and crime go hand in hand. So I don't subscribe to that. I think that there are various pulls and push factors. If you really want to think about repairing a city, a discussion I had at an event I participated in a few years ago with, I think, somebody from EY, who basically said, look, it's nice to have the tax incentives for businesses, right? But ultimately, they want talent. And if talent isn't there, they're just not going to come. And now, with the fact that talent can pretty much work from anywhere, you could be in the Bay Area and get a worker that's currently living in Denver, Colorado. I just don't see it. I don't see how you manage to do it. Now, of course, one thing I called last year that I'm going to say was probably the biggest driver of things in 2022 and will continue be one of the biggest drivers of where things go in 2023 is I said affordability, housing affordability was going to be a big deal. People are moving where housing is more affordable. We saw that in 2021. We saw that even in 2022, where the housing market slowed down or when affordability went near an all-time low. The markets that are relatively healthier, where you still see housing market activity, are markets that are relatively more affordable. And I think that's going to continue to be the thing. If San Francisco wants to make a comeback, and I'd say most of the big cities, housing affordability will likely be the thing in 2023 into the future. People move where they get amenities, a bang for their buck, essentially. When you look at markets that are performing relatively better in a high interest rate environment, they're more affordable. They're in the Midwest right now. And so I really think that affordability will continue to be a big deal. And that if some of these cities want to see a comeback, creating new housing, more affordable housing is going to be what brings people back.
Appreciate the thoughts as always. For Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other quality podcasts at americastalking.com.